This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Oh, how about now? That's why I always ask first. All right, you should be able to hear me now. I had my mic muted. My name is Derrick Broze. Welcome to the Conscious Resistance Network. We are going to be talking about fluoride, water fluoridation, and by now you've probably heard the announcement of the National Toxicology Program, the U.S. government agency, releasing their final report on water fluoridation and on children's IQ, lowering IQ, et cetera, et cetera. And if you've been following my work for the last couple of years, you know that I have been deep into this fluoride lawsuit that's been going on between the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the Fluoride Action Network. In fact, I was in San Francisco for 2 weeks in court back in February. And I know those of you who are listening on my old YouTube channel, which I am streaming on right now, you might have missed this if you were just following me on YouTube, because the channel just came back on a couple of weeks ago, about a month now. So you missed everything I did prior to that. But in February, I went to San Francisco and I was there in person for 2 weeks. I was doing live tweeting. I did numerous articles, numerous interviews on all sorts of channels promoting what was taking place at that lawsuit. And ultimately, the lawsuit wrapped up after 2 weeks, and then we were told we were waiting for the judge's decision. Well, it's now been, what is that? February, March, April, May, June, July, August. It's almost September. 7 months now, and we still have no decision. But as I'm going to tell you guys today, I believe that is about to change. But we're going to start with talking about this latest announcement regarding fluoride, because, as I said, it's in the news everywhere, but you're probably not getting the full story. And I think because I was there in person in the courtroom, and because I've been following this since 2017 when it first started. And for those of you who remember, even on my old YouTube channel back in 2020, summer 2020, COVID days, everything was locked down. The first phase of the trial took place, and it was completely on Zoom. And I was there again every day in Zoom, in the courtroom, virtually, live tweeting, etc. So I've been following this court case since the beginning. I've also been following the saga of this National Toxicology Program report. Some of you might have only heard about it because of the last couple days, but today we're going to get deep into it. So first off, let me remind you guys, my website is theconsciousresistance.com, theconsciousresistance.com. And when you go there, you can subscribe to my newsletter, which I encourage you to do, because following me on social media is not adequate. This is the best place to keep up with all of my work. Either visit my website directly or sign up for our email newsletter. And you'll see a post for today, the truth about the U.S. government's latest ruling on fluoride. You can click that, and in there you will see the show notes, which covers my latest article, which is what we're going to be focused on today. So you can scroll down and you can see that my brand new article for The Last American Vagabond, which was just published yesterday. And actually, if you go to The Last American Vagabond and you click on the TLAB team tab right here, it's a drop-down menu. You see Derrick Broze, and you see it drops down to all my different investigations. At the bottom is the fluoride trial. If you click that, it brings you here and it shows you everything I've written on the fluoride trial and just fluoride in general for the last 4 years that I've been working for TLAB. That's 5 different pages. So if you want to get caught up, there's plenty there to do so. But we're going to focus on my latest article, because this will get you caught up with everything you need to know. And I called it the long-delayed U.S. government report finally released, and it concludes fluoride lowers IQ in children. So this is what we're going to focus on today. Again, thank you guys for being here. Please go ahead and smash that like button wherever you're at. Give me some thumbs up. If you're on Rockfin, Rockfin super chats and donations are always appreciated, but what matters the most is sharing the content so we can get this in front of as many people as possible. All right, so the long delayed and censored final report from the U.S. National Toxicology Program has found, quote, moderate confidence that fluoride exposure is consistently associated with lower IQ in children. Consistently associated with lower IQ in children. Again, if you've been following me, you've already known this. But this NTP report, as I mentioned, has been the source of controversy over the last couple of years because certain elements of the U.S. government have been blocking the release of this report. We got the final version here in late August 2024, but this report, according to the National Toxicology Program scientists themselves, was ready to come out in 2022. 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, they said it was ready to come out May 2022, then September 2022, and as I'll go over here in just a bit, it was consistently blocked. But let's focus on what this final report says. The final report, which is also sometimes known as a monograph, it says that they examined 72 studies and found the association between fluoride exposure and IQ in children. And 64 of those studies found, quote, an inverse relationship associated between estimated fluoride exposure and IQ in children. So of the total 72 studies that the NTP considered, 19 of them were considered high quality. And of those high quality studies, so think about this, you got 72 studies overall, 19 of them are considered to be high quality, and there's various qualifications to meet that determination of high quality. And of those 19 high quality studies, 18 of them, quote, found a reported inverse association between estimated fluoride exposure and IQ in children. And what that means is that the higher the fluoride exposure goes, the lower the IQ goes. Even among the other 53 studies, which they said were low quality, which, you know, again, there's just doesn't mean they're not worth looking at because they obviously did, but they're considered lower quality. The NTP found that these studies, 46 of the 53 low quality studies, which is 88% of them, also found an inverse association between estimated fluoride exposure and IQ in children. And for those who don't know, the National Toxicology Program, it is run by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and it's specifically an organization that focuses on coordinating, evaluating, and reporting on toxicology within public agencies. And it's actually headquartered at another lesser known agency. You guys know about the NIH, but you probably haven't heard of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, the NIEHS. And so again, while I've been seeing it all over Twitter, and a lot of you have been tagging me, and the Associated Press and a lot of mainstream press is reporting on this. I was actually on Redacted yesterday, for those who know that channel. It's a big thing. A lot of people are finally paying attention. But if you've been following my reporting on TLAV, this isn't news to you. I mean, if you've seen my videos over the years, this is not new information. The only difference now is that the report is in the final version. So where before, like the fluoride advocates could say, oh, that NTP report, don't pay any attention to it because that's just the draft report. That's nothing. That's not the final conclusions. Well, guess what? We got the final conclusions now, and the final conclusions say that fluoride is associated with lower IQ in children. So that's the only difference. If you've paid attention to my previous reporting, if you feel like you're kind of you're having a deja vu and you've heard me talk about this, it's because I have talked about this. But the major difference is now we can conclusively say this is what the NTP concluded. But let's get a little deeper into it, because one of the things you're going to notice is that some of the mainstream reporting, particularly this one, let me see if I can pull it up, Associated Press, AP, fluoride. There's this one article that I see going around everywhere that it adds these caveats. Actually, it's in my article. I'm not sure why I'm searching for it. Let me go back here. These mainstream articles are basically trying to downplay what's going on, and they use language like at twice the allowable limit. So although the conclusion of the final version of the NTP's monograph is strongly worded, it is likely to continue to be debated due to certain caveats. For example, the conclusion mentions higher estimated fluoride exposures, which the scientists note are, quote, at drinking water fluoride concentrations that exceed the World Health Organization guidelines for drinking water quality of 1.5 milligrams per liter of fluoride. The NTP scientists call for more studies to, quote, fully understand the potential for lower fluoride exposure to affect children's IQ. So again, the NTP scientists and whoever peer reviewed this, because we know, like I'm going to share in just a moment, that there has been interference and there have been other forces, particularly Rachel Levine, formerly known as Richard Levine at the Assistant Secretary of Health, and others within the NTP have interfered for the last couple of years. Like I said, this report was ready 2 years ago, but they kept saying, no, we need another review. We need another review. This report has undergone the most extensive reviews of any other National Toxicology Program monograph in history. So that's one thing to know. And so when you see those language in there, which I guarantee you the fluoride advocates are going to seize on, they're going to say, no, this doesn't apply because the U.S. currently recommends 0.7 milligrams per liter of fluoride. But this report is talking about higher estimated fluoride exposure, and it's talking about levels that even exceed the WHO's recommended dose of 1.5 milligram per liter. So this doesn't apply to the U.S. Population. Okay, it's more data, but we just need more studies, right? And they just want to keep kicking the can down the road, when in reality, we've got almost 100 years worth of data showing how fluoride affects you, not only your IQ, but your bones, your liver, your kidney, hypothyroidism, the pineal gland, and so many other ways. So these caveats are already being used by the corporate media to downplay the seriousness of the NTP's conclusions. And like I said, one of the most widely circulated articles that I've been seeing the last couple of days is this Associated Press one here. It's titled, U.S. Government Report Says Fluoride at Twice the Recommended Limit is Linked to Lower IQ in Kids. And that's the key thing, twice the recommended limit. That mention there, it's designed to misinform the public. And I guarantee you, if you guys do what you should do as freedom lovers and as activists, take my article, take this video, share it with other people, etc. If they go out and do some searching, they're going to find mainstream articles that claim, oh, but it's at twice the recommended limit. Okay, so yeah, maybe you're right. Fluoride does cause harm. Okay, you're not as much of a conspiracy theorist as I thought. But this doesn't apply to our lives. This is just, at really high levels, which are not anything we're currently being exposed to, which is not true, as I'm about to show you. However, if you go deeper into the NTP's 324-page report, not just the headline, not just the results and the conclusion, the abstract, the scientists make it clear that they believe that their conclusions apply to the U.S. population. And this is what they say, quote, however, because people receive fluoride from multiple sources, not just drinking water, individuals living in areas with optimally fluoridated water can have total fluoride exposures higher than the concentration of their drinking water. In addition, there are people living in the United States who live in areas with naturally occurring fluoride in drinking water that is higher than 1.5 milligrams per liter. And the NTP scientists go even further and they say this, quote, this indicates that the moderate confidence in the inverse association between fluoride exposure and children's IQ is relevant to some children living in the United States. Does that make sense, guys? I hope that's coming through. So you go beyond just the headline, and I guarantee you the Associated Press in this short little piece they did here, which is like less than 1,000 words here for such a big topic, they don't mention that at all. They don't mention that the scientists add, however, this does apply to children in the U.S. because people are being exposed to fluoride not just from the drinking water. And this is important because as I've been reporting on and as the scientists have been saying, I'm going to show you some more of their data here, we get exposed to fluoride, particularly if in the United States. I'm currently in Mexico, but in the United States and parts of Canada and parts of the UK, which are starting to fluoridate. And now actually, as I reported a couple months ago, the UK is considering fluoridating the entire nation. So you're not just getting fluoride if you drink the water, which by God, stop drinking tap water. What the hell's wrong with you? Please stop drinking tap water and stop drinking bottled water with microplastics that are going to get into your brain and your balls and your penis and things like that. If you are drinking tap water or you're cooking with it or you're eating processed foods, more than likely all those things contain fluoridated water in it. So if you see anything, like let's say you look at the package that says water, unless it specifically says reverse osmosis filtered water or something, or distilled or something to that effect, it's fluoridated water, especially in the United States. So not only are processed foods just not good for you, but more than likely they've had added fluoride water to it. And then the whole thing is when you're cooking with your noodles or your pasta or your coffee, whatever, as the water boils away, the fluoride is concentrated into your food. And this applies especially for pregnant mothers and people with kidney problems who will consume more water than the average person. Because as I've reported in the past, once a mother progresses through her pregnancy, by the third trimester, she's drinking way more water than the average person because she's consuming water for herself and her body, which is going through a lot of strain and pressure, but also for the child. And then people who are on like kidney problems, like dialysis and stuff like that, they're also told they need to drink more water. If they're drinking fluoridated water, it's just going to cause even more problems for them. So the point here is this report absolutely 100% applies to our current situation in the United States at 0.7 milligrams per liter. Do not let the corporate media try to do a little bit of sleight of hand and tell you that this study isn't relevant to our current circumstances. It absolutely is. And this is an important point. That's why I laid it out all in my article. Again, you can find this at The Last American Vagabond. You can find it at theconsciousresistance.com. We're going to go a little deeper into it in just a moment. And I'll tell you about the latest updates I heard related to the fluoride trial now that this report has come out. But I just want to make that clear, guys. This does apply to our population. Do not let the propagandists convince you or your loved ones that this report is not relevant to your life right now. It is absolutely 100% relevant to your life. And the reason that I've been screaming and shouting about fluoride for over a decade now is because pregnant mothers and children are being exposed to it on a daily basis, probably in the millions and hundreds of millions of people who don't hear this information and don't know that there are other options, and they are being impacted. This specifically focuses on lower IQ, which obviously lowering IQ, neurodevelopmental problems are a huge thing, but that's just one of the many problems associated with fluoride. So we need to really get this information out, guys. And I appreciate those who are making that effort. Let's continue here. So as I said, there's been a lot of just bullshit going on in the background the last couple of years as the U.S. government has tried to keep this report from getting out to the public. And the scientists at the National Toxicology Program have done their very best behind the scenes to try to preserve the actual quote unquote science. You know, that science we're always told we need to trust, et cetera. Well, the scientists are actually trying to keep the science alive, the real data, and the different members of the U.S. government, we're going to talk about them in just a second, have done their best to keep this from you guys. If it was not for the lawsuit by the Fluoride Action Network and against the U.S. EPA, which, as I mentioned earlier, started in 2016 after the EPA denied their petition under the Toxic Substance Control Act when they presented data showing that fluoride is a neurotoxin, and then they filed a counter lawsuit, and it went to the first phase of the court hearing in 2020, and then it went to the second phase of the hearing in February of this year. If it wasn't for that, we might not have never known about this report. The U.S. government and the people behind it might have been successful at keeping this report from ever getting out and seeing the light of day. But thankfully, because of the discovery process, Michael Connett, who's the lead attorney for the Fluoride Action Network, and his team were able to get emails within the CDC's Oral Health Division, within the Department of Health and Human Services and other agencies, showing that they were trying to suppress this report and showing that the National Toxicology Program scientists wanted it to come out. So after this report has come out now, I'll just mention this, that it seems like Judge Chen may actually finally issue his ruling, because yesterday when I talked to Michael Connett and I got the quote that I'm about to share with you, he told me that both sides, the EPA's attorneys and him and his team, were notified by the judge that they have till next Wednesday to file a joint letter if they see that there are any, quote, meaningful differences between the draft version of this report and the new version. So that means the judge is paying attention, and I believe, and I think that this is what the Fluoride Action Network team believes as well, that the judge was waiting for this report to come out, that he figured, you know what, I might as well not make a ruling until that final version of the NTP report is out. Well, guess what? It's out now. It's out in the public, and the judge is giving them till next Wednesday to file a joint letter if they have anything they want to mention. And I'm sure the U.S. government is going to try to say, oh, yeah, see, the report concludes that this is not applicable to the U.S. population, so make sure to consider that, judge, and dismiss their case. And I'm sure the Fluoride Action Network is going to try to say, hey, this confirms with what we've known, that fluoride is lowering IQ in children. Judge, you must rule that fluoride is a neurotoxin and begin the process of ending water fluoridation in the United States. So we are very, very close. We are like the closest we've ever come to getting an answer about this lawsuit. So for all of you who are messaging me and emailing me, Derrick, what's going on with the fluoride lawsuit? We're getting pretty close, guys. Trust me, I've been as impatient as you are. But Michael Connett told me this via text message. He said, the NTP's landmark report confirms that there is a large, consistent, and reliable body of scientific research linking fluoride to reduced IQ, and that the doses associated with lower IQ are precariously close to what hundreds of millions of Americans consume every day. He went on to say, quote, quote, this isn't what people signed up for when we started adding fluoride to the water. We didn't sign up to add a neurotoxicant to our water. We signed up for something that could help our teeth. And now that we know it can affect our brain, we really need to go back to square one on this. So some really strong messages there from Michael Connett. And I'll just give you a couple more details before we wrap up. I just wanted to do this video because it's breaking news. And as I mentioned, I was on Redacted yesterday. I'm going to be doing some more interviews this weekend. I'll be on T-Lab with Ryan tomorrow. I'll be on the Vigilant News Network tomorrow as well, talking about this report, trying to spread the awareness and getting the word out where we can. And of course, as soon as we get a ruling from the judge, I will do a follow-up video. But emails released in January 2023, as I said, which were part of this lawsuit, they show that the U.S. government has been in a concerted effort to block the release of the NTP draft report. I'm just going to show you a couple of emails which show this directly. So an email dated April 28th, 2022 shows a Dr. Mary Wolf, who is the director of the NTP's Office of Policy Review and Outreach. She emailed somebody named Casey Hannon, who's the director of the CDC's Division of Oral Health, which you need to understand, the CDC's Division of Oral Health is directly tied to the lobbying group, the American Dental Association, who refuses to accept that there's any harms related to fluoride. And they are the big lobbyists that continue to push this because they are not only afraid to let go of what the CDC continues to call one of the top 10 public health achievements of the 20th century, water fluoridation. But also, as I've reported before, I believe these individuals are weary that they might be opened up for lawsuits if they admit that, whoops, we were wrong, fluoride is harming you. And then all the people who've been getting fluoride treatments at the dentist or been drinking fluoridated water can now ask, well, was my child's IQ lowered because of this? I think I'm going to file a class action lawsuit and shut these people down. And I think that's what they're terrified of. So again, Dr. Mary Wolf on April 22 emails Casey Hannon at the CDC's Oral Health Division and says, quote, the NTP's analysis and conclusions are set. So again, more than 2 years ago, the scientists said that their conclusions were set. And Dr. Wolf told Hannon that the NTP had reviewed the CDC's previously submitted comments, but still planned to release the review in mid to late May 2022. So the CDC came in and said, oh, we think you should make all these different changes. And the NTP scientist via Dr. Mary Wolf is like, we heard you, we looked at your comments, but we're still good to go. We're ready to release this. And then in a May 11th, 2022 email, a few weeks later, Dr. Mary Wolf again tells the CDC that the NTP has, quote, set May 18, 2022 for the publication of the monograph. The monograph will be posted to the NTP website, and we will email a notice to the posting of the NTP listserv subscribers. So clearly, they were ready for this to come out 2 years ago. However, later that day and the next day, Dr. Karen Hacker, who's the director of the CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, tells Dr. Mary Wolf that there's a concern within the CDC about publishing this review without, quote, an additional review by NIH leadership. So as I mentioned earlier, this report, this monograph has undergone multiple reviews, multiple peer reviews, and it's more reviewed than any other monograph in NTP's history. And they were like, let's do one more. And they also mentioned the potential of an interagency review by the Department of Health and Human Services. And as I'm going to show you in just a moment, the Department of Health and Human Services is part of the problem. They're part of the people who blocked this. Dr. Wolf then responded and said the CDC told the CDC, quote, we, the NTP, believe the current findings as stated in the monograph reflect the scope of our evaluation and the available scientific literature, and no revision is needed. So this is the reason these emails are so important. The reason I harp on this, and I wish more people understood how important this is because, guys, we often hear about the peer review process, but how often do we actually get a window into that peer review process? Like, pretty much never do we ever get to see what the scientists are actually discussing behind the scenes in that quote unquote peer review process. Well, because of this lawsuit, the emails were released. And so we can see, as I've reported over the last year or two, we can see the anonymous peer reviewers saying, hey, you should change this, you should change this. And basically their goal was to try to, as I mentioned earlier, say, okay, well, this only applies to levels way above the currently allowed limits in the United States, or to try to change the language, because this is the problem with wordplay, that you can add one single word in there, like maybe, probably, things like that, and it really changes the nature of a statement. It can go from being a very strong statement, fluoride causes lower IQ in children, to being, we have moderate confidence that fluoride at higher exposure levels could cause lower IQ in children. You see the difference? And that is what these peer reviewers have been trying to do, is to just try to keep people from really understanding how important this whole report is. So that's why I'm emphasizing this now, and I hope you guys are getting that. We rarely ever get a window into the peer review process. So the NTP scientists keep coming back and saying, no, this thing is ready. And even further, we got Dr. Mary Wolf again in another email with the Division of Oral Health at the CDC, a May 12, 2022 email. Dr. Mary Wolf emailed Dr. Hannon at the CDC, and Hannon states the May 18th release date for the monograph is almost certainly not going to happen. OASH and the NIH-OD are pretty clearly going to get more involved. Now, OASH is a reference to the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Health, which is the second highest office in the Department of Health and Human Services. And the NIH-OD is a reference to the National Institute of Health's Office of the Director, which is the highest office at the NIH. And who is the current director of the NIH? A man by the name of Lawrence A. Tabak. And these are the real problem, that there's these bureaucrats that most of us have never heard of. We're all worried about Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab. Meanwhile, you got some dude who we've never heard of, who's the director of the NIH, and he's just stepping in and preventing the release of this. In addition to this, we also have a June 3rd, 2022 email, which shows Nicole Johnson, Associate Director for Policy, Partnerships, and Strategic Communication, once again in the CDC's Oral Health Division, who contacted a Jennifer Greaser, a Senior Public Health Policy Analyst in the CDC's Washington office. So you don't need to know the names. You can look at my article if you want to, but basically you got somebody from the CDC emailing somebody else from the CDC in Washington, and they say, quote, the latest we heard is that ASH Levine has put the report on hold until further notice. Who is ASH Levine? That refers to the U.S. Assistant Secretary of Health, Rachel Levine, formerly known as Richard Levine. And so we know that Lawrence A. Tabak, who's the director of the NIH, Office of the Director, and the Assistant Secretary of Health, Rachel Levine, both of them are named in these emails as having interfered, or at least clearly getting more involved in preventing the release of this back in May and June 2022. Here we are, guys, 2 years later, and people are still being exposed to fluoride. So think about that. The NTP scientists wanted this conversation to happen 2 years ago, May 2022. They said repeatedly, we are ready for this report to come out. The science is done. We already reviewed your comments. We're ready for it. The conclusions are set. And meanwhile, in these emails, which once again, we would never have seen if it wasn't for this amazing historic lawsuit by the Fluoride Action Network and the discovery process, these emails show that the U.S. government, elements of the U.S. government within the CDC, within the Department of Health and Human Services, intervened to stop you from seeing this report 2 years ago. And despite that, the scientists continued to press on, and I think the public pressure from the lawsuit, the little bit of public pressure, because as you guys know, or you probably noticed, there's been no reporting at all on the mainstream corporate media about this lawsuit. And because of that work, though, by the Fluoride Action Network and Michael Connett, we know this. Now we know it. So we need to take a moment to give some praise and some appreciation to Michael Connett, to the entire team at Fluoride Action Network, because these emails show what we have known for a long time. Namely, that the government officials, U.S. government officials at some level, were preventing the release of this important review on the toxicity of fluoride. And that the CDC's interference comes on top of the already unusual lengthy process that the report has had to go through, included being evaluated and peer reviewed dozens and dozens of times. And there's more emails in there that you guys can find. I reported on this whole fluoride emails. I honestly think this thing should be a bigger scandal. Hopefully you can make it a bigger scandal by spreading this information. And my final point is that this isn't even the latest data. This report that just came out, the NTP report, it stopped in considering evidence in 2023. So since then, there have been even more studies showing fluoride is affecting people. And I reported on this back in May. So just as recent as May, we had another study showing the association between water fluoridation and brain health. This was published in the JAMA Network Open Medical Journal. Here, I'm pulling it up right now. You guys don't have to trust me. You can go read the study for yourself. It's called Maternal Urinary Fluoride and Child Neurobehavior at Age 36 Months. And it was based on children in Los Angeles, mothers and children in Los Angeles, based in the U.S. And they found the same thing. That report concluded, Quote, these findings suggest that there may be a need to establish recommendations for limiting exposure to fluoride from all sources during the prenatal period, a time when the developing brain is known to be especially vulnerable to injury from environmental insults. And they found, quote, prenatal fluoride exposure may increase risk of neurobehavioral problems among children. I mean, the fluoride advocates have no leg to stand on. They've got nothing left to stand on, and they haven't for years, and that's kind of the problem. I've got future reports coming out about the fluoride whistleblowers, and I'm going to show you guys how back in the 90s, scientists at the EPA have been trying to blow the whistle of this. They had their careers destroyed. They were dismissed as cranks and crazies, and here we are now, 30 years later, and it's undeniable. Now, I haven't checked what the fluoride proponents are saying, like the American Dental Association and those folks, but I guarantee you they're already trying to weasel their way out of this one. But I hope and I pray that my reporting and the work of the Fluoride Action Network can reach more people, and also that Judge Edward Chin will rule correctly and find that fluoride is indeed a neurotoxin and that is causing harm to children. It's causing harm to you. It's not just the children. It's not just the pregnant mothers. That's what these studies are focused on. But as the Fluoride Action Network and their extensive database of research at fluoridealert.org shows, it is causing harm to every single person who drinks fluoride in different ways: bones, kidney, liver, pineal gland, brain, etc. We could go on and on and on. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of data, my friends. So this report, you can find it at theconsciousresistance.com. The truth about the U.S. government's latest ruling on fluoride. It links to my latest article at TLAB. Long delayed U.S. government report finally released, concludes fluoride lowers IQ in children. And one more thing I'll show you guys before we wrap up here, especially those of you, if you're watching on YouTube right now, as I mentioned earlier, since I was deleted for the last 4 years, you missed a lot of my work on fluoride. But if you want to go down, you scroll through our categories, you see we have all these categories breaking down all of the content I've put together over the last 10 plus years. And you can see we have a category specifically for water fluoridation. It's at theconsciousresistance.com/water-fluoridation. You can find it directly on our website. And you can listen to the interviews I did with the expert witnesses at the fluoride lawsuit, including Dr. Howard Hu, including Dr. Bruce Lamphere, Dr. Philippe Grandjean, my interview with with Michael Connett, who's the lead attorney, as well as Brenda Staudenmeyer, who's one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit as well. You can go back and look at my reports while I was in San Francisco. You can check out all the work I've been doing for the last decade plus, including the fact that the mainstream media seems like they're preparing for people waking up to fluoride. I did a report a couple months ago where there was an article called "Is Fluoride the New Anti-Vax?" And it's becoming clear that the corporate media and their funders in the aluminum industry and the American Dental Association are afraid that people are waking up to this. And so they're preparing by trying to have propaganda headlines like that and calling fluoride the new anti-vax. And so be prepared for that. You might have friends and family who push back and think you're crazy, but at the end of the day, the data is on our side, the evidence is on our side, and that's all we need. The truth is on our side, and we know it. So please, guys, continue to share my reports, and I will continue to stay on this story. You can support me by going to theconsciousresistance.com/invest. I have my Substack page, my Buy Me a Coffee page, my crypto wallets if you want to invest. We've also got a P.O. box if you want to send love mail, hate mail, cash, or checks in the mail. I appreciate that. And also you can support us by supporting our sponsors, which you can find at theconsciousresistance.com, the Above Phone, Cultivated Mind, Organic Mushroom Extracts. And that's where we're going to leave it today, guys. Thank you so much for being here with me. Please do share this report once we wrap up. And until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free, my friends. Peace.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.